Today we're making flutter bloomers. I love this pattern. It looks great with or without the flutters on it. I recommend using a fabric that is more of a cotton knit fabric without spandex because you don't want it to be too floppy. When you lay out your pattern pieces, it's important that you get mirrored pieces for both the front and the back. So you can either cut on the fold like I'm doing and then separate it later, or you can flip your pattern piece over and cut it 2 different times. It's important to pay attention to the notches on the front and back pieces. If you decide to clip those rather than marking them, just make sure that your clip is less than 1/4 inch so that it will be covered by the seam allowance in the end. Turn your pieces and then you are ready to start sewing. To begin, lay the 2 front pieces on top of each other right sides together, and we are going to serge or sew down that long edge. If you're not using a serger, just use a stretch stitch on your sewing machine like a zigzag so that it will be stretchy in the end. Do the same for the 2 back pieces now. Okay, open up your back piece so that it is facing up, and then lay your front piece on top of it, right sides together. Line up one of the sides so that you can sew it together. There will be a gap on the other side because the front piece is a little bit less wide than the back piece, but that's okay. When you finish that one side, then match up the other side and serge that together. Now take the 2 base pieces and meet them up so that they are evenly matched and sew or serge them together. Turn your bloomers right side out and then grab your flutters because we're going to add those next. If you are not adding flutters to your bloomer piece, then skip ahead about 2 minutes to the next section. To start, we're going to add a hem to the curved side of each flutter piece. So you're going to fold it under 1/4 inch and then hem it there. If you would rather not add a hem, you can just trim off that 1/4 inch and leave it as a raw edge. When you're done pinning, it will look like this. The hem is turned towards the wrong side. I'm going to use a cover stitch machine to sew down my hem, but you could also use a regular sewing machine using a zigzag stitch. You could probably even get away with a straight stitch for this because it's not going to really be stretched at all. Now on the straight edge of our flutter piece, we're going to create a gather. So to do a gathering stitch, I'm going to change the settings on my sewing machine to the highest setting for stitch length and the highest setting for tension. For me, that is 5 and 9. Then I'm going to pull out my strings so that they are really long and sew a straight stitch all the way down that edge without back stitching at either end. When you get done, separate your top string from your bottom string and then gently begin pulling on one until your fabric begins to gather up. Use the notches that you created in the fabric to know where to line up these flutters. You're going to place them right side together, and the curved hem of your flutter is going to face up towards the waistband. So find the first notch and clip the edge of your flutter piece right there. Then you'll probably need to adjust your gathers a little bit so that your flutter can go all the way around to the other notch on the other side. When you get it all clipped, serge or sew it in place. Part 2, adding the leg bands. Take one leg band piece and fold it in half so that right sides are touching. Sew or serge down that short edge. Open the band up and this time fold it in half again, but do it widthwise and with wrong sides touching. It will look like this when you're done. We are now going to quarter this band, so find the seam and put a pin there. Then fold the band in half and place a pin on the opposite edge of the pin you just placed. Then fold the band so that the two pins are now touching and you have two more edges. Place pins on either side. To attach this band to the bloomer, find the seam and then line that up with the very base seam on the bloomer. Pin it there and then use the top pin to line up with the seam on the side of the bloomer. If you have flutters on your bloomer, you are pinning this leg band on top of the flutters and sandwiching that flutter in between the bloomer and the leg band. The leg band is just a hint smaller than the leg opening, so to pin the sides, match them up with the leg notches and make sure that the leg band will stretch all the way around this opening for you to do that. If you're finding you're just not quite getting enough stretch for it to go all the way around, you can recut your leg band just a little bit longer, maybe like half an inch. When you get done, it will look like this. All the raw edges are lined up and it is ready to be serged on. As you're sewing it on, you'll need to stretch the leg band a little bit to meet the length of the leg opening. Try not to stretch the bloomers, just the leg band, and the pins will help guide you on how much you need to stretch. When you're done, flip the seam down, iron it in place, and then repeat for the other leg band. It's now time to create the waistband on our bloomers, and there are two different ways to do the waistband. The first way that I'm going to show you now is best for those who use sergers. If you do not use a serger or you would just like to do the more simple instructions, skip ahead about 2 minutes to the next section. Start by overlapping the ends of your waistband elastic by 1/2 inch and then sewing it securely in place, backstitching several times. To attach the elastic to the bloomers, we're going to line up that overlapped edge with the seam in the very back of the bloomers. First, do a few stitches to anchor the elastic in place, and then you're going to begin to stretch the elastic as you're serging it on. Try not to serge off any of the elastic, just the very edge of the fabric, so you're not cutting the elastic at all. As you go around, continue to pull the elastic tight and try not to stretch the bloomers at all. When you get done, you'll have this gathered look at the top, and you will fold the elastic down to create the waistband. Fold the edge down and pin it in place at all 4 seams. When you sew this edge down, you'll be creating the waistband, and you're going to sew right there along the folded edge. I'm going to use a cover stitch machine to do this, but you can use a sewing machine with any kind of stretch stitch. As you're sewing, try really hard not to sew over the puckers if you can help it. Pull your bloomers flat and try to sew over them as flat as you can. This will give you the most stretchy waistband at the end. Okay, you're all done. These bloomers are so cute and they look good with everything, but we especially like them with our perfect tank pattern. This is the simple waistband finish, and it's perfect for those that don't use a serger. The following video is from a different bloomer tutorial, but the instructions are exactly the same, and you'll get the same result with the Flutter bloomers. With your bloomers inside out, turn down the waist by 1/4 inch and iron it in place, and then fold it down another 3/4 inches and iron it in place again. That way your raw edge is completely enclosed. Pin it all the way around and then sew a straight stitch around the entire bottom lip, but leave a 2-inch gap so that you can insert your waistband elastic. Attach the waistband elastic to a bodkin or a safety pin, and then use that tool to push it through the gap opening. Bunch up your fabric as you're pushing it through, and keep the tail end of the elastic out of the gap at all times. Take both ends of the elastic and overlap them by 1/2 inch, and then sew this in place, backstitching it several times to make sure that it's really secure. Tuck the elastic now back into the gap opening, and then use a straight stitch to close over that gap, trying not to catch any of the elastic when you're sewing. Adjust the gathers so that they're evenly dispersed, and I like to take both side seams in each hand and stretch it as far apart as it will go. This kind of resets the gathers. Then I sew a stitch right there in that seam across the waistband, a stitch in the ditch, so that the elastic won't flip down in the future. And I do this on both sides. Congratulations, you're all done with the Flutter bloomers, and we hope that you love how they turned out.